Rumpelstiltskin, based on the story by the Brothers Grimm, illustrated by Desidera Guizidarni. Chapter 1. The Miller's Daughter. Once upon a time there was a poor miller who loved to show off. He boasted about everything. I have a pretty daughter. Sometimes his boasts were true. Hello, Father. And sometimes they weren't. I'm the best-looking man around. One day, on his way back from a hunt, the king rode through the miller's village. Suddenly, he stopped. A beautiful girl was standing on the path. What's your name? Asked the king, gazing at her. Her name is Anna, said the miller quickly. She is my daughter, and she can spin straw into gold, he added, boasting as usual. Really? Asked the king. Yes, really, replied the miller, nodding his head. In that case, bring her to my castle, ordered the king, and rode away. This is your chance, Anna, cried the miller. The more the king sees your pretty face, the more he'll want to marry you. You could be queen. The next morning, the miller took Anna to see the king. The castle walls were old and crumbling. Windows were broken and doors were missing. The king must be short of money, whispered the miller. You can go, the king commanded the miller. As for you, he said, turning to Anna, follow me. Chapter 2. The King's Test. The king led Anna down dark corridors and up twisting stairs. At last, they reached a tiny room stuffed with straw. In the corner was a large spinning wheel. You are pretty enough to marry, said the king, but are you as clever as your father says? You have tonight to turn this straw into gold. If you fail, you shall die. Then he went out and locked the door. Anna sat down, put her head in her hands, and sobbed. Oh, Father, she cried, what have you done? I want to be king, but I can't spin straw into gold. No one can. I don't want to die. That's what you think, came a voice from the window. Anna jumped. There, by the window, was a little man, riding on a wooden spoon. His long white beard waved about in the wind. Hurry up, he shouted, and let me in. It's cold out here. With a trembling hand, Anna opened the window, and the little man flew in. Mistress Miller, he said with a smile, what will you give me if I spin that straw into gold? For a moment, Anna was too shocked to speak. She could only open and close her mouth like a fish. I could give you my necklace, she said, at last. Perfect, said the little man, grabbing it. He leaped onto the stool, tossed his beard over his shoulder, and began to spin. Anna gasped in surprise. The straw was changing into gold before her eyes. She tried to see how it was done, but as she watched the whirring wheel, she felt her eyes begin to close. Soon, she was fast asleep. Chapter 3. Glittering Gold. Anna woke up at dawn to find the little man gone, but the room glittered with gold. When the king came in, his eyes lit up in delight. But it's not enough for me, he said. I need you to spin more gold. I have servants to pay. He took Anna to a second room, larger than the one before. Once again, it was stuffed with straw. You have tonight to return the straw to gold. If you fail, you shall die, said the king. Then he went out and locked the door. Anna sat on the stool and cried. I still don't know how to spin straw into gold, she sobbed. But that night, the little man came again. Let me in. What will you give me if I spin this time? He asked. I'll give you the ring on my finger, Anna replied. Perfect, said the little man. He pulled off her ring, hung his beard over his ears, and began to spin. Whir, whir, whir went the wheel, and all through the night the little man left as the sun rose. When the king came in, he jumped for joy. But I still need more gold, he cried. After all, I have a country to run and enemies to fight. I want enough money to last my whole life. He took Anna to another room, even larger than the one before. This one was bursting with great piles of straw. You must spin this too, all through the night, and if you succeed, you shall be my wife. That night, the little man appeared for the third time. What can you give me now, Mistress Miller? He asked. Oh, cried Anna, I have nothing left to give. Then promise me your firstborn child, said the little man. And if I refuse? Asked Anna. I won't spin, he snapped. Anna thought for a while. I do want to be queen, and he might forget his request. Finally, she said, I promise. The little man grinned, tied his beard under his chin, and began to spin. The next morning, the king was dazzled by all the gold. At last, he cried, I have all the gold I'll ever need. Anna, he said, you are both beautiful and clever. Will you marry me? Oh, yes, said Anna at once. And so Anna, the poor miller's daughter, became queen. My new wife. Chapter 4. Anna's Promise. A year later, Anna gave birth to a beautiful boy. She loved him more than her own life. But one dark winter's day, the queen heard a tapping noise at her window. Let me in! Oh, no, she gasped. The little man's back. You can't come in, cried the queen, clutching her baby. That's what you think, said the little man. He disappeared from the window. The queen waited. Perhaps he's gone, she hoped. The next moment, there was a rustling noise in the chimney, and the little man whished into the room. Give me the baby, as you promised, he cried, dancing around the room. Take whatever you want, pleaded the queen. You can have all my money and all my jewels, but please let me keep my son. No, said the man. Something alive means more to me than all the treasures in the world. The queen wept and begged and wept again. At last, the little man took pity on her. I will give you 3 days, he said. If you can find out my name before then, you may keep the child. Chapter 5. Name Games. The queen lay awake through the night, trying to remember every name she had ever heard. When the little man came the next evening, the queen recited all the names she knew. Is it James? Peter? John? She began. But to everyone, the little man shook his head and said, That is not my name. On the second day, the queen rode far and wide, asking everyone their names. That night, she recalled the strange new names. Is your name Sheepshanks, Short Ribs, Laceleg? She asked. But to everyone, the little man shook his head and said, That is not my name. You'll never guess. By the third day, the queen was in despair. She sat down for supper with the king, but could hardly eat a thing. I have a strange tale to tell you, said the king. 2 days ago, I went hunting through a deep, dark forest. In the middle of the forest was a little house. Outside the house, the strangest little man was jumping about. He hopped on one leg and sang, "Today I bake, tomorrow brew, the next I'll do the same. Ha! Glad I am that no one knew that Rumpelstiltskin is my name." The queen smiled when she heard the king's story, but she didn't say a word. When the little man arrived that night, he said, "Well, Mistress Queen, do you know my name?" At first, the queen said, "Is your name Solomon?" "No," said the little man, jumping up and down in excitement. "Is your name ZBD?" "No," said the little man, leaping around the room. "Perhaps," said the queen, after a long pause, "perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin?" "How did you know that? How did you know that?" cried the little man. With a roar, Rumpelstiltskin jumped on his spoon and shot through the wall. He was never seen again.